The millionaire didn't even look at his face when he kicked him. That was the cruelest part. Not the force of the kick. Not the pain that shot through the waiter's leg. But the way the man acted as if he had just kicked a chair, not a human being. And in that moment, no one in the room realized one terrifying truth. The quiet waiter on the floor was a lethal fighter who had ended battles before they even began. The Golden Crown Hotel was built to make people feel important. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls above the dining hall. Soft piano music floated through the air. Every table was filled with men and women who wore wealth like perfume, expensive, loud, impossible to ignore. Except for the waiter. He moved silently between the tables, dressed in black and white, posture straight, eyes lowered. His name tag read Ethan, but no one ever used it. Guests snapped their fingers, waved glasses, barked orders. Ethan accepted it all without complaint. At 35, he had learned an important survival skill: invisibility. He had been on his feet since dawn. After making breakfast, tying a small ponytail in his daughter's hair, and walking her to school, he had come straight here. Double shift. No breaks. Because Lily needed new shoes. Because rent was due. Because being a single father didn't allow weakness. Table 9 needs attention, the manager whispered nervously as he passed. Careful. That man is difficult. Ethan nodded. Table 9 belonged to Victor Harrington. The millionaire sat like a king among his court, tailored suit, gold watch, loud laughter fueled by expensive wine. Everything about him demanded attention. And he enjoyed every second of it. Ethan approached calmly. Good evening, sir. May I? You may hurry up, Victor snapped, not even looking at him. I asked for sparkling water 10 minutes ago. I apologize, Ethan said softly. I'll bring it right away. Victor finally looked at him. Not with curiosity. Not with interest. With disgust. Ethan turned to leave. That's when the room changed. Victor stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly across the marble floor. Before anyone could react, his polished shoe slammed into the back of Ethan's knee. The sound was sharp. Ethan collapsed forward, his tray crashing to the ground. Glass shattered. Water spilled across the floor like ice. For half a second, no one breathed. Then Victor laughed. Watch where you're going, idiot. A few guests chuckled nervously. Others looked away. No one spoke up. Ethan stayed on one knee, one hand pressed against the floor. Pain burned through his leg, but his face remained calm, controlled, almost distant. He had felt worse. The manager rushed over, panic etched across his face. Mr. Harrington, please. We don't allow. Oh, relax, Victor waved him off. If your staff can't handle a kick, maybe they should work somewhere else. Ethan slowly stood. His uniform was wet. His knee throbbed, but his voice was steady. I'm sorry if I was in your way, sir. That surprised a few people. Victor raised an eyebrow. You're apologizing? Yes, Ethan replied. I'll bring your water. And he turned away. Someone whispered, pathetic. Another laughed quietly. They didn't see Ethan's hands clench for a brief moment. They didn't know what he was holding back. Because Ethan Cole had once been trained to break a man's arm in less than 3 seconds. Back in the kitchen, he leaned against the counter, breathing slowly. A young dishwasher stared at him. Man, he kicked you. You okay? Ethan nodded. I'm fine. He wasn't fine. He was remembering. The desert heat. The weight of combat gear. The voice of his commander yelling orders. The moment he learned violence was a language some men only understood too late. He had sworn never to speak that language again. For Lily. He straightened his vest, picked up the sparkling water, and walked back out. Victor saw him and grinned. Look who's back. I thought you'd quit. Ethan placed the glass carefully on the table. There you go, sir. Victor leaned forward, eyes gleaming. Then he slowly lifted the glass and poured the water down onto Ethan's shoes. Gasps rippled through the room. Victor smiled. Oops. Ethan looked down at the water dripping onto the floor. Then he looked up. Something in his eyes changed. Not anger. Not fear. Focus. Sir, he said quietly, please don't do that again. Victor laughed. Or what? You'll cry to your manager? Ethan didn't answer. Because in that moment, Victor Harrington had crossed a line he didn't know existed. And the entire room was seconds away from falling completely silent. The most dangerous people in the world don't look dangerous at all. They look tired, quiet, ordinary. They wear uniforms instead of medals, and hide their scars where no one thinks to look. Victor Harrington had no idea the man standing in front of him had once been trained to end fights before they began. Ethan didn't move when the water soaked into his shoes. He simply stood there, breathing slowly, the way he had been taught years ago. Inhale through the nose, steady the heart, clear the mind. Across the table, Victor smirked, enjoying the attention. "What's wrong?" he said loudly. "Lost your tongue." A few guests laughed again, but the sound was thinner now. Uneasy. Ethan straightened, hands resting calmly at his sides. "Sir," he said, his voice low, "I'm working to support my family. I won't disturb you again." Victor tilted his head. "Family?" He chuckled. "You look like the type who couldn't even protect himself." That sentence landed harder than the kick. For just a split second, Ethan wasn't in the Golden Crown Hotel anymore. He was standing in a dusty military compound under a burning sun, sweat dripping down his spine. He was 24 again, younger, stronger, carrying a rifle that felt like an extension of his body. "Cole," his commander had said, clapping him on the shoulder. "You're quiet, but when things go bad, you're the one I want beside me." Ethan had never fought for glory. He fought so others didn't have to. The memories came in flashes. A night raid gone wrong. Gunfire tearing through the dark. A teammate screaming his name. Ethan dragging him to cover, blood soaking his hands. The weight of responsibility pressing heavier than fear. He had survived. Not everyone had. The image shattered when Victor snapped his fingers inches from Ethan's face. "Hey, I'm talking to you." Ethan blinked, returning to the present. "Yes, sir." Victor's smile faded slightly. "You're weird," he muttered. "Most people beg or get angry by now." Ethan didn't answer. He thought of Lily instead. Her small hands wrapped around his finger the morning she was born. The hospital room too quiet. The doctor's eyes full of pity. Emma's empty bed. He remembered standing alone at the funeral, holding his infant daughter, promising her softly, "I'll never let this world break you." That promise had cost him everything else. After the military, Ethan had tried to disappear. No uniforms. No weapons. No violence. He took the first job that didn't ask questions. Waiting tables wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. And it was safe. Until tonight. Victor leaned back in his chair, clearly bored now that Ethan wasn't reacting. "Manager," he called. "Your waiter has an attitude problem." The manager rushed over again, sweating. "Ethan, maybe you should." "I'm fine," Ethan said gently. The manager hesitated, then nodded and backed away. He needed this job too. Victor stood up slowly. That's when the tension snapped tight. "You know," Victor said, circling Ethan like a predator who thought he had already won, "people like you should learn their place." Ethan finally looked directly into his eyes. The room felt smaller. "I know my place," Ethan replied calmly. Victor scoffed. "Really? And where's that?" Ethan's voice was steady. "Taking care of my child. Earning an honest living. Walking away from men who need to hurt others to feel big." The air went dead quiet. Victor's face reddened. Pride flared, sharp and dangerous. "You think you're better than me?" "No," Ethan said. "I think you're angry." That was the wrong answer. Victor shoved Ethan hard in the chest. Gasps filled the hall. Chairs scraped back. Phones were lifted. Ethan stumbled back one step, then stopped. His body remembered before his mind could stop it. He caught Victor's wrist mid-motion. Not violently, not roughly, just enough. Victor froze. Pain shot up his arm as Ethan applied precise pressure, fingers pressing against nerves Victor didn't know existed. His knees buckled slightly. What are you doing?" Victor hissed. Ethan leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want trouble," he said. "But don't touch me again." Victor yanked his arm free, stumbling backward, eyes wide now. For the first time, fear cracked through his arrogance. You assaulted me," he shouted. Security. Two guards at the entrance looked at each other, then rushed forward. Ethan exhaled slowly. The room buzzed with whispers. "Did you see that? That waiter." "No way." Ethan closed his eyes for a brief moment. He had tried to walk away. He had tried to stay invisible. But some men don't stop until they're stopped. And as the guards reached for him, Ethan knew the past he had buried was about to stand up, with everyone watching. The room didn't explode when the first punch was thrown. It went silent. The kind of silence that comes right before people realize they are watching something they can't undo. The first security guard reached Ethan from behind and grabbed his shoulder hard. That single touch flipped a switch Ethan had kept locked for years. Not rage. Not hatred. Training. Ethan stepped sideways at the exact moment the guard tightened his grip. His elbow came up, not fast, not flashy, just precise. It struck the guard's forearm, forcing the grip to loosen. In the same movement, Ethan twisted the man's wrist and guided his momentum forward. The guard didn't even have time to shout. He crashed into a nearby table, plates and silverware flying. Guests screamed as glass shattered across the marble floor. The second guard charged without thinking. That was his mistake. Ethan lowered his center of gravity, breathing steady, eyes locked. As the guard swung, Ethan blocked once, redirected the force, and drove two fingers into the soft hollow just above the man's collarbone. The guard collapsed, choking, clutching his throat. It was over in seconds. No wild punches. No chaos. Just efficiency. The entire dining hall froze. Victor Harrington stood at the center of it all, his mouth hanging open. The laughter was gone. The confidence was gone. What remained was disbelief. What are you?" Victor stammered. Ethan straightened his vest calmly, as if he had simply finished serving a course. "A waiter," he said. People whispered around them. That wasn't normal. He didn't even look angry. "Did you see how fast that was?" Victor's face twisted between fury and fear. His pride screamed louder than his instincts. "You think you're tough?" he yelled, stepping forward. "You think you can embarrass me like this?" Ethan didn't move. "Sir," he said quietly, "please sit down." The words weren't a challenge. They were a warning. Victor swung. It was clumsy. Desperate. Ethan caught the punch easily, his hand snapping around Victor's wrist. He stepped inside Victor's reach, placing one foot behind his leg, and twisted. Victor went down hard. The sound of his body hitting the floor echoed through the room. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Ethan released him immediately and stepped back. Victor groaned, trying to stand, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. He looked up at Ethan, eyes wide, breath shallow. Ethan knelt down just enough to meet his gaze. "I didn't want this," he said calmly. "But you don't get to hurt people just because you have money." Victor swallowed, trembling. For the first time in his life, no one rushed to protect him. No one laughed. No one applauded. They just watched. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Someone had called the police. Ethan stood and slowly raised his hands, palms open. "I'll cooperate," he said to the room. "I won't run." The gesture surprised people more than the fight. Police officers stormed in moments later, weapons drawn. "Everyone stay back." Ethan lowered himself to his knees without being told. "He attacked me," Victor shouted from the floor. "That man assaulted me." An officer looked from Victor to the unconscious guards, then to the broken tables, then to Ethan, calm, composed, hands raised. "What happened here?" the officer asked. Before Victor could answer, a woman near the back spoke up. "He kicked him first," she said shakily. "The waiter." For no reason. Others joined in. He poured water on him. He shoved him. The guards attacked first. Phones were held high, recording everything. Victor's face drained of color. Ethan was handcuffed and escorted out. He didn't resist. Didn't argue. As they walked past the tables, people stared at him. Not with pity now, but with something else. Respect. Outside, the night air was cold. Flashing red and blue lights painted the street. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. He thought of Lily. I'm sorry, he thought. I tried to walk away. At the station, as his name was entered into the system, one officer paused. Ethan Cole, he asked slowly. Were you military? Ethan hesitated, then nodded. A long time ago. The officer's expression changed. Another officer leaned over. You mean that Ethan Cole? Whispers passed between them. Records were pulled. The room grew quiet again. Ethan sat alone, hands cuffed, staring at the wall. He had buried that life. But tonight, the past had risen, and the world had seen it. And Victor Harrington? He was about to learn that money could buy silence, but not justice. Victor Harrington had silenced people his entire life with one thing: money. But sitting in that cold police station, watching officers look at him with something close to disgust, he realized too late. Money was useless when the truth had already been recorded. The holding room smelled of disinfectant and old metal. Victor sat on one bench, his expensive suit wrinkled, his pride shredded. Across the room, Ethan sat quietly, hands cuffed, eyes lowered. He looked nothing like the dangerous man Victor claimed had attacked him. And that confused everyone. Start from the beginning, the detective said, voice firm. Victor opened his mouth and stopped, because before he could speak, an officer entered holding a tablet. We've got multiple videos, she said. Different angles. Clear audio. The detective tapped the screen. The kick. The laughter. The water poured over Ethan's shoes. The shove. The guards grabbing Ethan first. Every lie Victor had prepared collapsed silently. The detective paused the video and looked straight at Victor. You assaulted him. Victor scoffed weakly. I was provoked. By what? The detective asked. Him doing his job? Silence. In the other corner, an officer approached Ethan. You served overseas, he said quietly. Special operations. Ethan nodded once. You could have seriously hurt him. I know, Ethan replied. That's why I didn't. That answer stayed in the room. By morning, the story was everywhere. Millionaire kicks waiter. Unaware, he's a trained fighter. Rich bully meets instant karma. Single dad defends himself after public humiliation. Millions of views. Millions of comments. People dug deeper. Victor Harrington's past surfaced like rot beneath polished wood. Assault settlements, hush money, threats buried under legal paperwork. Sponsors began pulling out before noon. By contrast, Ethan's story spread differently. A decorated soldier who vanished into civilian life. A widowed single father. A man who chose restraint when violence would have been easier. Outside the station, reporters waited. Ethan declined interviews. I just want to go home, he said. The charges against him were dropped by evening. Victor's were not. When Ethan finally stepped out, free, the crowd parted. Some clapped. Some cried. Ethan didn't look up. At home, Lily ran into his arms. Daddy, you're late. He knelt and hugged her tightly. I know, sweetheart. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Ethan sat alone at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone. Messages poured in. Job offers. Donations. Praise. He closed them all. Because fame wasn't what he wanted. The next day, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a single page. We know who you are. We know what you can do. And we know why you walked away. If you ever decide you want a place where your strength protects instead of hides, call us. A number was written at the bottom. Ethan stared at it for a long time, then folded the paper and placed it in a drawer. Across the city, Victor Harrington sat in his penthouse, watching his empire crumble in real time. News anchors spoke his name with disappointment. His phone buzzed with lawyers' messages. For the first time, no one laughed with him. They laughed at him. Victor slammed his glass against the wall. This isn't over, he muttered. But deep down, he knew something had changed. He had met a man who didn't fear him. A man who didn't need power to stand tall. And that realization hurt more than any punch. Back at the Golden Crown Hotel, the manager posted a new policy. 0 tolerance for abuse. Staff stood a little straighter. Because one quiet waiter had reminded everyone of something important. True strength doesn't announce itself. It waits. And when it finally speaks, the world listens. Power isn't proven by how hard you strike. It's proven by what you choose not to destroy when you have every reason to. Ethan Cole understood that better than anyone. Life didn't change overnight. The internet moved on to the next outrage, the next scandal, the next hero. But for Ethan, the world felt different in quieter ways. At the Golden Crown Hotel, people looked at him differently now. Guests said thank you instead of snapping their fingers. Some even apologized, awkwardly, ashamed of how they had treated him before. The manager offered him a promotion. Ethan declined. "I'm fine where I am," he said. What he didn't say was that he wanted normalcy, predictability, a life where Lily could grow up without headlines attached to her last name. At home, Lily heard whispers at school. "Your dad was on the news. Did he beat up a rich guy?" That night, she asked him quietly, "Daddy, are you dangerous?" Ethan knelt in front of her, meeting her eyes. "No," he said gently. "I just know how to protect people." "Me too," she asked. "Especially you." She smiled, reassured, and hugged him tight. Weeks passed. Victor Harrington's trial became public. Video evidence played in court. Witnesses testified. For once, Victor couldn't buy silence. The judge's sentence was calm, final. Guilty. The man who once kicked a waiter without consequence now stood smaller than he ever had, his voice shaking as the gavel fell. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Victor said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. Ethan never attended the trial. He was at Lily's school instead, sitting on a tiny chair, clapping as she walked onto the stage for her first recital. She waved when she spotted him, and in that moment, he knew he had chosen right. One evening, Ethan opened the drawer again. The letter was still there, the number still written. He thought of the men he had once served with, the ones who never made it home, the part of himself he had buried to survive. He picked up the phone, then set it back down. Not yet. That weekend, the Golden Crown hosted a charity event. Ethan volunteered to work. A man approached him near the end of the night, a stranger in a simple suit. "I just wanted to thank you," the man said. "My son saw what you did. He learned something important." Ethan nodded. "I didn't do anything special." The man smiled. "Exactly." Later that night, as Ethan locked up and stepped outside, he looked up at the city lights. For years, he had believed strength meant isolation, that being quiet meant being invisible. He understood now that true strength didn't need to be loud. It just needed to be steady. At home, Lily waited at the window. "Daddy," she shouted as he walked in. He smiled, because no matter how loud the world became, the greatest victory was returning home whole. Fire story message for viewers. Never judge someone by their job. Quiet people often carry the deepest strength. True power protects. It doesn't bully. Karma doesn't rush, but it never forgets.